and border security investigative reporter for TV, radio, and the print media. Kimberly has covered the news with outside the Beltway perspective. Her experience as an investigative journalist ranges from national security issues like Gitmo's Khalid Sheikh Mohammed 9/11 trial, immigration, foreign policies. TV correspondent for CW6 News San Diego, One America News Network. Her website is vkdreport.com, and normally she's streaming live at periscope.com and Facebook. Kimberly, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Chuck. How about yourself?
Pretty good, pretty good. Are you streaming right now on Facebook? Or
I am, both Periscope and Facebook.
Okay, all right. Eventually my slow computer still picks this up. I know. See, I always like to check and see, what she's wearing, and then we know what we're going to talk about. Yeah. Hey, and speaking of what you're wearing, I saw a beautiful Christmas tree on your Facebook when I was checking to see if you were there. Red, white, and blue. Boy, that was clever. And that is a beautiful tree. My goodness. I just wanted to bring that up.
Aim to please.
I think you said you aim to please.
Yes.
Right? Okay, there you go. One thing here before we get into some kind of hazardous duty, I guess, when it comes to our military, there was another thing that came across, and it was the all anti-white talk in America is having consequences in one good nation.
Yeah.
They were talking about the South African political that is urging a rally to kill whites and their pets.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to tell you something. You can kill a whole bunch of people. It's sort of like, you shoot a girl on a pier in San Francisco, but if the bullet would have ricocheted and killed a whale, then all of America would have known about it. You know what I'm saying? And when they're saying kill all the whites and kill their pets, boy, they're just asking for a hornet's nest.
Yeah, actually, I have very close ties to South Africa, and that's the country that you're speaking about. I lived down there for quite some time and still have ties to South Africa. And this is happening in a country that has gone completely off the rails now that they've got further and further from Nelson Mandela. And it's really tragic what's going on down there.
Yeah, absolutely. I never knew you had that strong connection.
Yeah.
With South Africa.
Yeah, it's my daughter's father and all her side of the family. They all still live there. And, right now the country is struggling to retain a middle class, and, the wealthy people, a lot of, European people have second homes down there. And of course, when things kind of completely fall apart, then it's no big deal for them just to leave and come back or go back to their homes wherever and buy another home elsewhere because they're very wealthy. While the people that live there have to worry about every day, now that you've got these more and more outrageous groups that are gaining more and more traction within the country, they're facing a lot of violence, and they're getting some help here from the United States media, because the media is like, you can't go a day without them saying white people are bad, or you're a nationalist, or you're racist, and all of these things. And people are watching this stuff. And when people see things like this in countries, especially like South Africa, they start getting emboldened. And when they get emboldened, they actually act rather than just saying words like we do here. They'll actually act. And we've seen this with all the farmers and ranchers in South Africa. And sadly, it seems to me, and people that I talk to and family down there, this is headed the same way Rhodesia turned into Zimbabwe and became a complete banana republic. The only difference in South Africa is China will take control of the situation, and then we know what China will do. They won't necessarily be there to help, make sure everybody has health care. They'll exploit them, take everything in the form of diamonds, rare earth minerals, and then they'll leave. And that's what actually will most likely happen to South Africa, which is the only economically viable country on the continent.
And if a lot of people don't realize how much China is involved in Africa, unless they listen to this show, because we've talked about it. I mean, China, give them credit, They know how to squeak into these little places. And by the way, we just happen to be here. Of course, we've been here for 4, 5, 6 years, whatever.
Yep.
And we're gonna help you out. Yeah, hey, you just let us take care of everything.
Well, at least they have a reputation. But they have, just real quick, they have a reputation, China, for like actually building roads and bridges and things like that, infrastructure in countries. The United States reputation is going to the Middle East and dropping bombs lately. So they do have credibility on that.
We can't even build roads here. We're going to be right back. More from Kimberly, Dvorak. Don't go away. One other comment about South Africa. Now, isn't that where the First Lady just went down there recently?
Yeah. Well, she went down to Africa. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
More Central Africa, but that's, yeah.
Yeah. So, but she's not down there helping what we're talking about, right?
No, not at all. I mean, what we've seen, their former president, Zuma, was trying to be dictator for life, and finally, after several years, a lot of rape allegations, multiple wives, corruption and all that, he finally moseyed along and left office. And the new president has come in, and they're more hardliners. And they are actually, I mean, they actually changed the Constitution a few months back, saying that it was okay to take farmlands from white farm owners and no compensation to be paid. They just have a farm today, tomorrow they don't. And the problem with that is when people do things of that nature, not only does that erode trust and evoke fear, but it also, what happens is a country that it has been known to be able to take care of itself and feed itself. Now in a situation like that, you're putting people in charge of ranches and farms who have no idea how to ranch and farm. So then you're going to have to start being a net importer of food, and that's where things really start turning in a downward spiral in countries like that. And that's kind of what we're slowly starting to see in South Africa. Tragic, because it's the most beautiful country I've ever visited in my entire life, hands down. I've been all over the world. South Africa is the most beautiful country. It's very hard to see what they're doing down there. Very hard to watch something that was so brilliant and bright and unbelievable people and cultural just kind of be washed away. So
I guess what it is, they don't want to give any credit to how much the whites improved the country. That's what I'm getting from a lot of reports. It's like, no, look, it's ours. We're taking it back, and so long, adios.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you could necessarily say that they just want to take from the white man, because I don't think that's necessarily what this is all about. But certainly they're saying it's our time and we need to focus on our natives rather than the people who've been running the country for the last, couple hundreds of years ago, I guess. I mean, they've been around for a long time. So it just, it's a sad state of affairs, because it is a beautiful country. They have rare earth minerals. They have, economic viability. But once you start taking people's land, you have to be an importer for food. Then you're not going to have the investors come in to move the country forward. And then, I mean, situations like this sadly turn into anarchy before they get better. So that's kind of, I think the sad thing about all this is it's going to get worse. And it's troubling because, I've seen it at, I think, when it was its best. So.
Yeah. Well, good luck for all of them.
Yeah.
Everyone from A to Z. Yeah. Good luck in Africa.
It's very sad.
Yeah. And I know we got way off, but Kimberly and I, you never know what we're going to talk about when we have these visits. You have hazardous duty, okay, for, people like, the SEALs and Navy and stuff like that. And also, I know that you get more money if you're in, like, say, on an aircraft carrier and you're taking care of, the planes on deck. You actually get $150 a month. And I don't know if that's more or if that's the total. Because it kind of sounds like that's, oh, yeah, he's making $150 a month. Yeah. Sort of sounds like my old days in the Navy.
Yeah.
But anyway, you're telling me now that the Air Force is going to go up to 500,000 for new pilots? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So the Air Force and the Navy, they are short about 1,200 to 1,500 pilots. They need to hire on that many pilots. And over the last several years, the American airline companies have been really going after these pilots and luring them to work in the private sector. So the military has found itself in a little bit of a bind. And I think it kind of came to a head when they had Hurricane Michael that, hit the East Coast and really damaged a lot of airplanes sitting in North Carolina at the air base there. And the reason that they got left there and, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of damage wasn't because the planes couldn't move. It was they had no pilots to fly those planes out of that region into a safer area. So naturally, people start talking about, well, what are we going to do? We have to get more pilots. We rule the skies. We need to make sure we get this. So the Air Force now is trying to not only keep their pilots that are there, but also implement, it's almost it's about $455,000 signing bonus. So it'll be a bonus. If you say you're going to go to the Air Force, you go through flight school, and then you serve a total of 13 years. They're going to give you almost $500,000 to do that. And that's over and above what it costs, as you know, Chuck, that it's very expensive to train pilots. So this is a new plan that they're trying to implement. And now what's happened is, the old unintended consequences here. Now you have people who are pilots and they're saying, well, you know what, that's great. We're going to do that. But hey, I want my money now, or I'm going to leave. So now, as the military tends to do, they try to react, and as Congress tends to do, just throw money at the situation. They are now considering paying new pilots a signing bonus of just under $500,000, which is incredible, over and above what their monthly salary would be. That's a lot of money. That should lure people. And even under those conditions, they are not getting the people that want to stay in the military, or they're not even getting too many, kids that want to actually join as a result. And most likely because we're not going to be fighting a lot of manned planes too much longer. If we actually rebuild the military the way we should be rebuilding it for a war of the future, which will be asymmetrical, will be drones, it will be robots, artificial intelligence. That's how future wars are going to be fought. And, the military is kind of hanging on to the old, World War II, the old Vietnam, and the Middle East war, saying, well, this is what we need and we got to train people for it. But they're training, they're going to go through and train these kids, and then they're not going to necessarily, they're going to have all these trained kids. What they should be doing is training them to be drone pilots and how to fly these drones.
Or the new Trump Space Force, right?
Yeah. So when I learned about that, I kind of been researching it all weekend. And, when I learned about that, that's just absolutely crazy. And again, when you look at it, it's going to cost a couple $2 billion. I think it's $12 billion for them to, do this project. So you say they got $12 billion and they're putting this program together, but we can't find $5 million to, protect our southern border so we can make sure that we don't have any wars on our homeland and that we know who's coming in and going out of our country. But we're going to spend this money in the military for pilots that in essence will someday be out of a job in any sense, because that's not the way the future is going.
Yeah, as soon as you said $12 billion, I was thinking that built a few walls. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now we're talking like most of your information is coming from the North Carolina area.
Yeah.
And the thing that you got to remember, listeners, that the old pilots there that are saying we would like to get a $500 bonus, to start learning the new ways or whatever.
500,000. Yeah.
500,000. And what you have to realize, okay, the people that are complaining, they're in the military, so you just can't say, well, you bring them on, I'm going to quit. They can't do that.
Yeah. And this is, the military has a real retention problem right now. And, and for the most part, when you look at a lot of the positions in the military, this is why we need like a complete overhaul in the military as to, and it really has to start with something basic like a mission statement or an end game. What are we willing to go to war for? What are the weapons that we will need to fight wars of the future? The military simply hasn't sat down and done its homework. And that's a very simple and easy thing that they should be doing so we know where to spend the money. So you train a guy to operate a tank, and he's in the Middle East and he's driving down the road in some village or whatnot. A lot of those guys, they haven't been trained on really how to use the offensive, components of that vehicle, because they just aren't training them to do this. So they're going to not be able to move on or progress within the military because they're not even getting the training they need right now to fight today's war. So, I mean, it's very, I mean, I love the military immensely. You know me, I love the military immensely. And sadly, it's a few higher ups that sit inside the Pentagon. And a lot of Obama holdovers from people I've talked to over the last week, a lot of Obama holdovers that are, putting stop signs all over the place and not allowing any of this new technology to really move forward to prepare our country for the future. And that's really sad to see. Yeah.
I hate Trump syndrome.
Yeah.
That's the main thing.
I guess, well, that, I mean, and I'm also going to be talking about the Obama holdovers and the problems they're having in DC over that situation as well. But yeah, I mean, in essence, you have a lot of people that are in positions where, they should have on day one handed in their resignation, as all political appointees do. Someone somewhere did not tell President Trump on his first couple days in the office, or probably in the first couple of months, hey, you need to ask for the resignations of every single political appointee. And, if you don't have to take or accept them all if you like the person, but typically they all go. It's just, I mean, they all did. Obama, I mean, everybody does it. But for some reason, Trump didn't get this message. And so you got to be questioning who's actually advising him that this didn't take place. So naturally, when it comes to spending money, making anything look good, or actually making the military become a more leaner, meaner fighting machine of the future, all you get is, red stop signs and let's build some more carriers and that's going to solve all our problems, which of course that's not going to solve the problem.
I was watching a couple of those series where they had, men in action and they were actually fighting in the war and everything. And it was interesting now how they use drones to go and check and see if the bad guys are coming out of certain buildings and stuff like that. Yeah. And I was thinking, boy, it's neat they've come that far. Way back when they were using drones to go out and look for the submarines. That was about the extent of it all. But we've really come a long ways. But it's also interesting that Trump is talking about, a space force, and Reagan was talking about Star Wars, and he had this whole big plan that wasn't even, hadn't even been done yet.
Yeah.
And the Russians said, oh, wow, we're not going to be able to keep up with that. That's going to cost too much money. So pretty good thinking on both parts.
I'll agree on that as well. Trump, I mean, he's ahead of everybody on that game because it may not be actually a space wars like Star Wars or anything, but they're thinking what future wars are going to be like and making sure we have the infrastructure together so we can protect this country from a future war.
And you speak of holdovers and how apparently the president didn't get the word, just ask everybody to resign, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And Comey, who, and I've mentioned this a couple of times, he even at one time referred to his new, my new celebrity status. That's what he said.
Yeah.
And he was at a book signing, right? And he referred to himself, I've got this new celebrity status, that I have to, live up to or something like that.
Yeah.
And then he started bragging about how you don't have somebody come in and the FBI and interview him and all this stuff on the status of a Flynn, General Flynn, without getting permission from the president. But he said, I figured he's only been here a couple of weeks and maybe I can get away with it. And he said, I did get away with it. We didn't ask, we just did it. And see, there's another thing. Trump, trustworthy, is that the word? I don't know.
Well, I think that, with President Trump, I mean, he was never in politics, ever. So, I mean, he had to rely on Reince Priebus. He had to rely on his close advisors that, many of whom have already been fired by the president, by the way, because they weren't giving him very good advice. And when you look at a situation of an incoming president, I mean, it takes months to kind of get things in place. And I mean, and you had an administration that had virtually no, government experience, working for a government, how things are done. And I think that this is, one of Trump's, he gets frustrated as all get out because it's like the general. When he's the general, he sits there, and this kind of goes to Mattis, and this is what Mattis is kind of facing. I mean, when you're a general or you're the president, you're like, you know what? There's a hill over there. Okay, you guys go over there. You take that hill and you keep it, and you radio back when you own that hill. That hill's done. President Trump said, hey, when you've got this road built, come back, talk to me, we'll like do this. Well, that's not the way things are run in the government, because you have all these different, bureaucracies, and the one bureaucracy saying, well, forget it, we're not going to do that one. So people just don't even try to make anything happen. And we're seeing that unfold, unfortunately, at the Pentagon in high numbers. And you're looking at Mattis, who is incredibly frustrated that he can't just do simple things. And he gets yelled out at for saying, look, you know what? Yeah, it is time for us to get out of Afghanistan. Maybe we need to start figuring out the drawdown, what it's going to cost in getting our guys out of there, because it's a war that's not, it's not winnable. We've done it for 17 years, and we need to, reallocate, readjust our plans in that region. So he gets just raked over the coals for making a decision like that, which happens to be the correct decision. And he gets faced with, a good number of the staff that has to report to him and that he has to trust to implement his plans. They're saying, we're not really doing it. Good luck. That's what they're doing here. And that's the problem.
You could almost write an article, Kimberly, about when egos get in the way of a war or something like that,
Yeah.
We're going to take our final break, and then we're going to be back with Kimberly Dvorak. Make sure you spell that name right. Dvorak, and it is thekdreport.com, and you'll find her on Facebook, Periscope, YouTube. She is absolutely everywhere. We'll be back, wrap things up in just a moment. CRN Wilder with Kimberly Dvorak, all right? CW6 News San Diego, One American News Network, and I think you're in Washington, D.C. I believe that's what you told me, right?
Yes, I am.
Any big, let's see, they've had the Marine Ball, the Navy Ball, the Army-Navy game. I just play. Military.
Hey, the Capitals. Yeah, I intend to go see a Capitals game before Christmas, I'm hoping.
Capitals, now, is that hockey?
Yeah.
Boy, I got to tell you, now, that was a lucky gift, Kimberly, a hockey guy.
They're very popular here.
Figure out that sport.
Very popular.
And you don't see very many cheerleaders. Does any team have a cheerleader team on little, no, they don't.
I don't think so. Not for hockey. No.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I'm just kind of wondering, what they would look like. Because I see the puck.
They'd be chilled.
Hitting them every once. I'm sorry?
They'd be chilled. It's a little chilly out there on the ice.
Oh, yeah. Well, what about when Chicago plays? Okay. The Bears. Little chilly there.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. It's cold on the east of the Mississippi, I guess we call it.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. If they were cheerleaders, okay, for the Capitals, they could demand, an extra 500,000, right?
There you go. You know what? Now that's something I can endorse.
That is hazardous duty.
Yeah.
Wow. Anything else on your mind before we have to leave here in a couple of minutes?
Yeah, I kind of like to address the Obama holdover situation, especially when it comes to the NSC, the National Security Council. That's we're looking at right now, John Bolton holds the title. That was General Flynn's former job, and McMaster served in there. Last year, in an office that is approximately 120 people in that office, last year, 40 of those 120 were Obama holdovers. And this year, it's slightly better at more than 30 that are still Obama holdovers. And so they're also sitting in there wreaking all kinds of havoc with national security and foreign policy issues, which should never be politicized. It's not a left, a right, it's an American, it affects all of us. And you're looking at holdovers sitting in those offices there that are really obstructing even what the president's trying to do, he himself over the weekend has spoke about, maybe it's time to get out of the war on terror, because we don't even know what that is. And we're just going around the country starting wars all over the place. And, the president, it's my understanding, and I've heard several things about this, he does not want to be a wartime president. He wants out of these wars. But who's actually continuing to run these wars is you've got people at the NSC that are working with the, the Secretary of the Pentagon, who happens to be Mattis. And then you have all these holdovers that are strangling any kind of policy that's going to be effective, that we can move forward, all because they just don't like Trump. I mean, in what kind of world do we live in when, we're going to sacrifice America because you don't like the president? If you don't like the president, then vote him out in 2020, because it's bigger than the president. It's about the presidency. People forget this. Presidents will change every 4 or 8 years. So, it's about the presidency.
And this new Attorney General for New York State that just got elected, she says, I don't care what he does, what kind of accomplishments, how great he is. Yeah. I'm going after him, his family, his children. I'm going after him, and that's it. Boy, now that's pretty bad.
Now, is that creating a job? Is that creating a job, though? I mean, the American people ought to be asking, or her constituents in New York, does that create a job or pay down the debt?
I'll tell you, yeah. Well, apparently the Trump haters love her, so there you go.
There you go.
Thank you very much, and have a very good Merry Christmas next week.
All right.
We'll talk about that. Kimberly Dvorak, and it is recuit.com. We're going to be right back. Alex Newman.